Hello and welcome to another Spark AR tutorial. In this video we're going to be looking at how to create a sort of evolution of the eye tracking tutorial that we did a while back, and we're going to be looking at how we can create a more cool and interesting effect. So I'm just going to preview it, show you what it is we're going to try and replicate. I'm just going to simulate touch here just to show you what this does. If I just tap my screen like so, we have this sort of holographic earth that spins around. We have some text, we have some particles emitting there, and this blue hue. But the interesting thing about it is how this sort of is all controlled and animated within the patch editor. So I'm going to go through the process we went through to build this, and kind of explain what I did in a sort of semi-logical order. So let us begin. So we've launched ourselves a new empty project to start populating. First thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to import our assets. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, like we've done in previous tutorials, we're going to insert our face tracker. And this face tracker we're going to then give the child of this iris. So if I click on this iris FBX and drag this onto my face tracker till it goes blue, we should now have this sort of button that will follow our head and move around. And from this we're going to create our effect. So it's worth noting that we're not going to be adjusting the position, scale or rotation values within the properties panel like we normally would. Everything we're going to be working with today will be using the patch editor and live data that's fed in via that. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to click on our face tracker. I'm going to go to actions and I'm going to insert my face tracker producer. This will open up my patch editor window, and we want to have this face finder, face select and face follower. We're going to use this face follower very similar to how we did the eye tracking to track the position of our eyes, or in this case just one of them. So we're going to drag from our face on the face follower and we're going to look for a face eyeball landmark like so. I'm going to try and keep this tidy because it will get quite complicated very fast. And I'm going to go to my iris and I'm just going to click on my position and rotation values. And I'm now going to link my iris left position to my left value there, and my left eyeball rotation to my iris 3D rotation value here. So now we should notice that our little button is now following and hovering over our left eye. However, at the moment, it's not really taking into account our eyelids, for example. So to fix this, we just go onto our face tracker, right click, insert face mesh. I'm going to create a new default material for this. I'm just going to quickly rename this material to invisible, because this is going to be an invisible material. I'm going to make the opacity of my invisible material 0. So we should have this sort of purple cube sort of floating around, but we're not seeing the face mesh. I want to drag this forwards, so I'm just going to keep this playing for a second. I'm going to change it to my inbuilt webcam so I can actually have more control. And I'm just going to keep my head still and pull forward my face mesh until it kind of oversects my eyeball. Just making sure that my face mesh is above my iris layer, hence why it wasn't quite working there. Just going to pull this back a little bit. Until I have the roughly my top eyelid and bottom eyelid covered. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to kind of digitize and make our eye look a bit weird anyway, so this isn't going to have to be a perfect science. So I'm just going to again quickly switch back to one of the prefabs. that it comes with. So as you can see, it's not quite perfect. But again, don't worry about this because that's not the goal of this activity. So on my iris, I'm going to go to the iris material, which is this Lambert one. And I'm going to give this a kind of darkish blue. Now again, this is up to you what colour you choose. I'm going with darkish blue, sort of to try and give this kind of like digital ghostly look. I'm going to reduce the opacity to about 65, 64, something like that, just so I can sort of see the eye underneath. And I'm going to adjust my emission to be a little bit in between so it gives off some light. I might actually pull the opacity up a little bit just to make it a bit more clear. So now we have our eye tracking, which is exactly like we had done in one of our previous tutorials. But this is where things start to get a little bit more muddled. So at the moment, my eye is tracking and will always track regardless what the face does. But what I actually want to have happen is this iris to appear and be animated. So to do that, I need to add some form of interaction to tell it when to play this animation that I'm going to create, or this transition I'm going to create. So I'm going to right click in my patch editor and I'm going to add a screen tap. Now bear in mind this could be any form of interaction. This could be an interaction from the face wherein if your mouth opens and the eye appears, or anything else essentially. And all we're going to simply do is we're going to drag from our tap down here and we're going to release it and we're going to add a switch. And we're going to drag from the on-off position and we're going to add a pulse. And this is where we're going to start introducing some new concepts that we haven't done in the previous videos, which will be the animation and transition tools. So from my pulse turned on, I'm going to simply drag my little handle up here and release, and I'm going to add an animation. I'm going to keep my duration at 1 second for this, but I'm going to link my turned off to reverse on this animation. I'm now going to click and drag from my progress, and I'm going to add a transition. So what this will do is take the values from the beginning, the first starting values, and transition them into the second value. So this is a sort of 2 keyframes essentially, or move between. I want the curve to be quadratic in and out, not linear, so I want the sort of speed to actually kind of curve between the values rather than just be a sudden change. And then I'm going to click on my iris and I'm going to click on my scale value, which is here. I'm going to drag my scale from my iris up next to my transition I've just created, and I'm just going to link the two together. And what I wanted to have happen is I want it to go from 0, so invisible, to when it's tapped it'll scale up to 1 and then stop. What I actually want to do is I want my iris to actually be wider than it actually currently is in the 3D model. So to fix that, I'm just going to go to my X value and type in 1.5, and I'm going to change my Y value to be 1.5 as well. If I now go to my preview window and click on the little gear and go to simulate touch and tap my screen, the eye should now scale up to fill the eye with the sort of this blue color. And if I click again, it should scale down back into the pupil. I want to preview that on myself just to double check. So it should scale up, fill my eye, give me this kind of digital doodah view. Click again and it should disappear. So this is how we get our kind of eye to illuminate. This is a very similar way to how we could do a kind of Terminator kind of glow fill. But what I want to do is actually have this light up, fill up, and then project out an image. So in the example I showed at the beginning, it's a spinning earth. So to do that, we're going to need to import some more assets and do a bit more work. So let's jump right into that, shall we? So what I need to do now is I'm going to need to import a 3D sphere. So this could be an FBX or .obj model. This could be something that I've created in Blender or any other 3D program. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to go to the AR library and I'm just going to search for an Earth, just something spherical or that's already available. I'm just going to import that into my project like so. So now I've got this 3D Earth object. Bear in mind, you would want to create this yourself in something like 3ds Max or Blender or whatever tool you prefer. And I want this Earth object to be a child of my face tracker, like so. So now we've got this massive Earth, this massive sphere, just sort of panning around, orbiting around. I don't want this texture though, so what I've found is I've just done a quick Google search online for a PNG texture, so we've got this sort of landmass but none of the ocean. Again, you could create your own, you could make any image you want for this. This is just sort of a very quick tutorial that you can play about with in your own time. I go to the Earth model and I go to my surface matte. I'm just going to change my shader type to be standard, and I'm going to change my texture to be that PNG image that I've just sourced from the internet. So now we have this sort of massive Earth that's sort of still moving around and panning around. I'm not going to adjust any of the values for this. I'm not going to adjust the position, scale, rotation. I'm going to let Patch Editor do all the heavy lifting for me. So what we need to do here is we're going to need to get this Earth to follow our eyeball. So we go back to our eyeball property down here in our patch editor. Our left iris position, I'm going to drag over here. I'm going to add another transition over here like so. And then I am going to go to my Earth. I'm going to go to my 3D position, so this little circle next to transformations, and click on that. I'm now going to link my 3D position to my handle here. So now this should track and follow my eye more accordingly. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to temporarily change the scale of my Earth just so I can see what I'm doing. Again, don't worry about this because we won't be actually keeping these values. Again, the patch editor will be doing and controlling all this for us. This is just so we can see what we're doing for the time being. And what I want to have happen is I want to have this sort of, when the screen is tapped, a similar thing to what we did with the iris. I want the same thing to happen with the Earth. So all I can do is from here where it says pulse, I can drag off and replicate what we did with the iris. I just add an animation clip. And I want the turn off this time to be a, oh, I'm going to go reverse again, but you could have this as reset and let's just see what happens. I'm going to change the duration of this time to be 2 seconds because I want this to play a little bit slower. And I want to click for my progress and add a delay. Now the reason I want a delay is I want the eye to fill up first and then I want the hologram to appear. I don't want the eye and hologram to appear at the same time. So we add a delay to change the timings for our secondary playback essentially, which is in this case our Earth. And I'm going to adjust the duration on my delay to be 0.5, which means after 0.5 seconds, this will kick out and start the transition value for our Earth. So let me just pull these across a bit here. So our delay is going to be linked to our progress. So the screen will be tapped, it'll be delayed and then play and then change. So we've got our positional values sort of adapting how we want them to. All we're going to need to do though is adjust our ending values. So at the moment our starting value will always be the center of our eye, which is what we want. but we actually don't want our ending position to be the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my X position to be negative 3.5, because that's roughly where the left iris is positioned on this model. Again, you might want to adjust this as you see fit. But what I want to do is I want to adjust the Z value to bring it forwards. So at the moment we have this Earth here. I want it so when it finishes playing, it comes forwards and stops, and then sort of follows around like so. To do that, I'm just going to change my Z value, which is the depth, and I'm going to change this to 6. So now, if I was to click play, it should hopefully fire through. It's currently not doing anything, so I'm just going to change my turned off value here and click that to reset, and remove my reverse there. Just see if that resolves it. So if I click play now, you'll notice it's sort of eye appears and then the Earth goes forward. If I click again, it just bounces back to how it was. So at the moment it's sort of is moving on the Z axis, so it is moving forwards. We need to obviously get the scale to do the same as what the eye is doing, so we're going to go through that in a second. But at the moment it's moving at a very linear speed, so it's moving this value to this value and just incrementing. There's no curve. So to do that, on my transition down here, I'm just going to change my curve to be an elastic out. So it means it will ramp up in speed and have a bit of a bounce at the end. So if I just press play now, see it has this bounce when it's finished. Like so, which is what I want. I want this kind of buoying, it's sort of pushing to the limits of where it can go and then stopping. That's what I'm trying to replicate here. Just change back to the inbuilt one here. So now I want to adjust the scale so it scales up like my iris. So again, we're going to want to do what we did before with the iris controls here. I'm going to go to my animation up here. What I'm going to do though is I'm not going to create a new animation, transition, etc. I'm just going to use this animation clip here. I'm going to drag from my progress. I'm going to add a delay because again I want this scale to happen after the eye is scaled. I'm going to change the scale delay to be 0.5 seconds or 0.6 or whatever you feel is appropriate. And I'm just going to drag the handle from delay to transition. I'm going to change my transition type to be quadratic in and out again. Again, you could play about and try different ones and see how that works for you. So transition type. I'm going to make sure my transition type is a point 3D. So I've got these 3 values. If it appears any other way, just simply right click, type and set to point 3D because we're working with 3 values in this case. I'm going to go to my Earth. I'm going to go to my scale under my transformations options and just click on that. And I'm just going to link my Earth scale to my transition scale. So what it should do is go from 0 to 1. However, I don't want to go 1 because it would be too big. So actually I'm going to change my X, Y and Z values to be 0.15, 0.15, 0.15 on the X, Y and Z end positions. So now if I click play, it should have this sort of effect. Now my Earth is obviously way too large still, so I'm just going to adjust these values again. So I'm going to go 0.015 and see how that does. So again, just adjust these so it sort of looks right to you. Again, depending on how large your sphere is. So that's obviously now too small. I'm just going to keep playing about these values until I get the kind of size I'm after. So it does appear as if 0.15 was correct. It just didn't seem to have updated when I did that last time. So let's just reset that. Let's check this is working. So I'm going to go and preview this on myself so I can see actually how control it properly. So if I now click my screen, my eye should appear, and then the Earth should appear in front of it. So this is roughly the kind of effect I'm after, like so. And again, I can adjust these values as I see fit if it doesn't work for what I'm after. So now we've got our basic eye appearing and our Earth appearing. What I want to do now is we want this Earth to continuously spin. So to do that, I'm going to go back down to my down here to my screen tap. I'm going to drag a new handle up to here. I'm going to create a new switch. I'm going to then drag from this on-off on my switch to create a loop animation. I'm going to click from my, make sure I'm going to change its duration to be 10 seconds. So it loops it over 10 seconds, which will be a full rotation, which is what I'm after. And then from my progress, I'm going to create a transition again. And then on my Earth, I'm going to go over to my rotation value and link this up to my transition. I'm going to change my X rotation to be around -45, same as my starting position, because the Earth is not perfectly straight on. I'm going to change my Z value to be 0. And I'm just going to change my Y value to be 360 degrees so it rotates on its axis. So if I just preview this to check it's working. I'm just going to preview this on myself because, again, it's easier to see things on yourself than it is on the prefab. So the Earth is now spinning round continuously. If I'm not quite happy with how solid my Earth is, so I'm just going to go to my Earth's material, which is the surface map. I'm going to reduce the opacity a little bit because holograms aren't perfectly solid, obviously. And I'm going to just give it a bit of emission, so it gives off a little bit of a light bleed, like so. There we go, that'll do. And so now I have this sort of rotating continuous Earth that still will scale and follow my iris, as I hope. So now we've got that done. What if we want to add that kind of blue color grade hue to it? To do that, I'm just going to go to my camera and my scene, right click, insert canvas, right click on my newly created canvas and create a rectangle. I'm going to fill this rectangle to be my parent. I'm going to make sure my canvas is at the top, so above my face tracker, like so it covers everything. And then on my rectangle, I'm going to create a new material. And on this new material, I'm going to make it a sort of techie blue color. I'm going to reduce its opacity quite a bit, so like so. So when I click, I should get this kind of hueish blue over the top. But obviously I don't want this blue to appear all the time. I only want it to appear when I've activated, essentially. So to do that, I just go over to my screen tap. I want to drag up to here. I'm going to create a new switch just to make things easier, so I can always go back and edit this easy rather than getting potentially confused later on. And then I want to go to my rectangle visibility. So I'm going to click on the sort of circle under properties on my rectangle. And I want to click and drag that from my switch to my visibility like so. So now when I tap, it'll go blue, my eye will fill up and the Earth will spin. Like so. So let's try adding a delay in between, because I think that's happening too much at the same time. Just to make this a 0.5. Let's try and see what happens here. This may not work. Might do it, I'll try. So it works, but it's happening a bit too slow. So I'm just going to adjust that to be 0.1. So we're getting the starting point right. It's not quite working on the end. We might have to just play about that a bit later, a bit more. What if I wanted something to follow my Earth? So if I wanted something to rotate and follow it, like in the previous sort of beginning of the video where I showed you some text floating around it. All I did there is on my Earth property, I right-clicked, inserted some 3D text. On that text, I added two materials, which is a front cover and a side and back colour, which is white and black, is what I used. I linked my text angle to a transition from my loop animation here. So I created a new transition, then linked my 3D rotation of my text to it, and I just simply offset my starting X and ending X position to be -75, so it had this sort of sloped look to it continuously, but kept the rotation because it was a child of the Earth. So that's how I did that, very simply. How did I do the particle emission? I linked the particle emission to be a child of my iris, and then I simply, on that particle emission, I made the color to be blue, increased the sort of speed a little bit. I changed my angle to be so it's horizontal to my scene. So down here in my scene, I want it to be on this horizontal line, this plane. So it shopped the particles forwards, and then I again linked the visibility of my emitter to my switch up here. So I limited the visibility of the emitter to here, so it would only play and become visible sort of after my eye was tapped, or the screen was tapped rather. I did also add a delay in between, so again I wanted the eye to appear, then I wanted the particles to emit, so I added appropriate time for that, and then it made the Earth appear slightly after that. So it went eye, emitter, Earth in terms of delay timings is what I tried to do there. So yeah, so this has been a very sort of quick and simple overview. Bear in mind what we've just created down here, this monstrosity. Basically to show you how you can do animation to a degree within Spark AR, and how we can start to try and build up more advanced effects by just simply playing about and adding, like Lego, bits together. And that's what I kind of hope you get from these tutorials, is this idea of each little section, you take what you want from it and then try sticking it in together and seeing what you can create. So I've been Student Fisher. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and will subscribe if you have any queries, comment below. Thank you for watching.